Welcome to Blackxecutive Podcast, where we share inspiration and actionable advice for Black creatives going pro. I'm your host, Jazz. With each episode, we'll chat with Black creatives thriving in entrepreneurship, corporate careers, and the nonprofit sector, all while building a network of Black creatives, 6 head nods apart. Enjoy the show, where the dreamers become doers and the aspiring become inspired. Let's get started. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the intro episode of Blackxecutive Podcast. I am your host, Jazz. So today I want to talk to y'all a little bit about what this podcast is, what it's about, what to expect, and who am I? Let's get started. First, who am I? I'm Jazz. I'm a writer by trade and by passion. And what I mean by that is that I am a creative who grew up loving to write. I loved it my entire childhood. I actually went to college to study for it. I taught it at the collegiate level. Then I went out and got a career doing it. And then I freelanced doing it. And my side hustle does it. So I am literally a writer through and through. That is what I do. I don't necessarily ascribe to a particular category of writing because I do several. In my pastime, I'm a fiction writer. I'm a creative nonfiction writer. I do low content books. I work on full content books. And in my day job, I work in IT as a content strategist UX writer, focusing on user experience. So I literally write all the time. I'm also a serial entrepreneur. So I have had a million different types of small business ideas and ventures that start up. And some of them have, progressed into other things, while others I have switched my focus. So that is another reason why this podcast exists, because I know there are lots of other creatives just like me. We are interested in a little bit of everything. And this is about getting focused and actually taking one of those things, or maybe combining several of those things into a business venture that actually works for you. I am also a storyteller. I love a good story, and I think that comes inherently with being a writer. So I am looking to tell good stories in this podcast, which is why I will be interviewing people and occasionally telling my own personal stories as well. So I've been down this road before, as far as trying to figure out how can I monetize my art? How can I hone my craft and really become an expert and become someone who people consult and who's capable of doing high quality freelance work in addition to doing high quality work in a corporate setting, if that's where you choose to go, or high quality enough to start your own business and create your own brand. It's really important to talk about those things as creatives, what we're actually going to do with our art. I'm also an avid reader and a curator of good advice. I love to hear people's stories. So a lot of the stories that people are going to tell during these interviews are just that, their stories. I'm not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with anything that they say. I am just listening and being an active listener and participating in the conversation and creating a space for them to tell their story without persecution and without backlash, right? I feel like, especially in the workplace, we don't have that space as much. Even as an entrepreneur, when you have a personal brand you have to maintain, you don't always have that space. And even in your personal social media, you don't necessarily always have that space. So I kind of want to create a space where people feel like they can just have a candid conversation about the real life struggles and successes of being a professional creative. One thing about this podcast that I want to make sure is that I don't want to come off like I'm an expert. I'm not professing to be an expert in anything except for maybe in writing, kind of, because I feel like I've earned that. I spent a lot of time studying that my entire life and going to college for it and working in my career nearly a decade doing it. So I think I can say that. But I'm definitely not an expert on anything else. I'm still trying to figure out life. I'm still trying to figure out how to be successful and what success means to me and how I measure that versus how society measures it. And which rules do I want to break and which ones do I want to abide by to participate in the system. So along that journey, I am still learning. And I feel like as I'm learning, I'm talking to people who are so knowledgeable about different things. And so if I'm talking to someone who's really good at one thing and then someone else who's really good at another thing, a little bit of that knowledge helps me get a little bit further but they also get to become experts more and more as they have those conversations and position themselves as experts across different platforms. So that's another reason that I'll be having these conversations. I'm not an expert. I am a peer on the same journey as you, and I'm having good conversations along the way. I wanted to do this show because I wanted to share those stories. I wanted to share what I've learned along my sometimes turbulent career decisions and business paths, and how I kind of got to where I am today. And I feel like a lot of other people can also learn from those very specific stories. And I'm specifically talking to Black creatives because I wanted to create something to and for my people. I am a Black woman. I am an American. I feel like you can be both. And I wanted to make sure that my voice is one that is heard so that people know that people look like them in these spaces, right? I'm tired of being the only Black person who does X. I want to end that narrative. I'm the only one who does this and who does that. I don't think that's true. I think we exist in all types of spaces and all types of environments, and we just have not quite connected with each other. The more ways that we can make those connections and begin to understand that, of course, as we know, Black people are not a monolith, and we have interest in several different things. We are extremely creative. We lead the trends, and that's just not me being, Black and prideful. It literally is a stat. Look up the Nielsen Normal report, okay, on African American consumer power. So we literally do lead the trend. And I feel like because of that, there's so much that we can add to the conversation that sometimes people don't feel like we are a part of. I also wanted to create the show because I want to inspire other Black creators who want to go pro. I have come across so many creatives who have tried things and they didn't work out, but they learned a lot of good lessons from it. And then they went back and tried it again and it worked out that time. Or they try something else. And I just feel like we can all learn from those particular things. So what can you expect from this show? You can expect me to interview Black creatives from all walks of life. Some of these creatives I will know. Some of them I will never have met in my life. And this will be one of my first conversations with them, hopefully of many. But either way, I invite you to listen in on the chat because I feel like you can learn a lot because I know that I will be learning a lot. You'll also be hearing from, occasionally, serial entrepreneurs who have managed to successfully accomplish and maintain multiple streams of income, which I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know that, right? That in order to truly, experience upward mobility, to move out of a hovering line of poverty that so many of us are faced with, living paycheck to paycheck, you have to have multiple streams of income. So occasionally I will interview entrepreneurs who do just that. They may not necessarily be Black creatives in the way in which we talk about them in this show, but they have done something that we're all striving to do. You'll also hear a lot of inspirational stories and actionable advice. And what I mean by that is people will tell their stories. And some of them will make you feel like this is the best thing you've ever heard and you want to play it again and you want to meet this person, you want to talk to them. And I hope you do just that. I hope you feel empowered and comfortable enough from hearing them have these conversations that you hit them up on IG or Facebook or YouTube or wherever they are and say, what's up? Like, let's connect because I want to build that network. So that's something that's super important to me. And then occasionally, what you can expect is a solo episode from me, similar to this one. There are some niche things that I've gotten into that I feel like I can share my experience with others. That's not to say my experience is an expert experience. It's the only experience or it's the best experience, but it's mine. And I'm a firm believer that by telling stories, you help others. You inspire them, you encourage them, and you also educate them and prepare them for the journey ahead. So if there's anything I feel that I've experienced that could add value to someone else's life, you will definitely hear me talk about that on the show. And what are those topics going to be? What are we going to talk about? So first off, we're going to explore backgrounds and stories from people that you will find very similar to yours. I am not looking to talk to the world famous X or someone who's, living a lavish lifestyle that seems totally unattainable and out of reach to some people. I am looking to talk to the everyday Black creative, the one who is going to work, the one who it has their own business, but maybe wearing multiple hats because they're on a budget. I'm talking to the everyday Black creative. So sometimes you will hear me talk to people who are in places in their career that you aspire to. And you're like, wow, that seems a long way away. But I'm hoping that by talking to these people and them providing their stories and their journeys, you'll feel like it's not that far away and it is more attainable. I'll also be asking them about specific steps that they took to get to where they are. I will probe for that as much as possible because I feel like we need to give away the game, right? Like, give away the game. Let's not hold everything so close to the chest when we're trying to help our people, right? We need to help each other. There are a lot of things we just don't have yet for many reasons. Systemic racism, redlining, miseducation. There are a trillion things that we can talk about in which we are not at the same place as we should be to run this race. But we're going to get there. And the more that we can talk about it and share that knowledge and build that culture where it's not dog eat dog, it's not crabs in a barrel mentality. And I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but just that mentality that we are here to help. And I'm a firm believer that the majority of us are not like that. We don't have that selfishness. We want to help each other. We want to see each other succeed. I'm a firm believer in the positivity and goodness of humanity. And I hope that that is something that you all will see and learn about me as you hear me interview these guests and have these conversations on the show. You'll also hear about how those particular steps can be applied to your career or to your business. So as much as possible, I'll probe guests to talk about those things. And at the end of each episode, I'll provide key takeaways that I found from that particular conversation that I think you may find useful as well. We'll also talk about all the nuances of managing your career or business that slips between the cracks. So being in corporate America can be great sometimes and sometimes not so great, right? Especially when we have racial issues that are happening in American society and our coworkers do not see and have those same experiences and they glaze over them and go about their regular day as though nothing is happening. Meanwhile, we are literally having a meltdown, right? So we're going to talk about that too. It's not all rose petals and sunshine. Same thing with entrepreneurship. We see so many successful stories of entrepreneurs, but there is so much struggle in between that. There are so many stories lost in between the cracks that need to be told, right? Because just seeing someone being successful is inspiring, but it doesn't help you. What you need is to hear about the trials, the tribulations, the good and the bad. And one of the last things that I want to note, and I think is the most important, is that I am a curator of ideas. I love to talk ideas with people. I love to hear their stories. I love to allow someone the space to be able to have a perspective that may be controversial. And by doing so, there will be times on this show where people will say things, they will have approaches that are radically different from mine or my beliefs. But I don't do this show because of what I believe, right? This is not a monologue-based podcast. This is a dialogue. So I want to hear what other people have to say and allow them the space to say and speak their truth. So if you ever hear something on the show and you feel adamantly like I need to comment on that, please do. Go to Blackxecutive.com. We have a contact form where you can leave feedback. I may even feature it on the show. I may ask you to be on the show and share your perspective. And I think that that's what we need to do. We don't need to be afraid of having ideas that everyone else doesn't necessarily have. We need to be okay with being able to say, you know what, that's their idea. That's not my idea. But I would encourage them to reconsider that. And I want to challenge them on that. So keep that in mind. There are going to be some conversations and some topics that make you say, I didn't think about it that way. And it's going to make you reconsider your approach to something. And there are some other things you're going to say, now what? I don't agree with that at all. And that's cool too. Just keep listening because there's always something you can learn from someone, even if you don't agree with everything that they have to say. I see it as allowing people to speak their truth and talk about their journeys as a Black creative trying to be a professional. And that means talking about all of the duality, all of the different perspectives, all the double-mindedness, double consciousness, W.E.B. Du Bois, of being a Black person in America trying to run or be a part of a business. So that's what we're going to be talking about. That is Blackxecutive. And one of my goals for this show is to make sure that not another Black creative has to start a sentence with, I'm the only Black person who does X. No, you're not. We're out here. We in this thing. And lastly, is I want to make it very clear. I'm very Southern. I'm a Southern chick from Little Rock, Arkansas. If you forgot Arkansas was a state, it's cool. I've relocated to the East Coast, so that's where I am now. But you will hear my accent, and sometimes I'm going to talk like this, and that's okay. And you're just going to have to bear with me, because I am not one to hide my Southernness, just as I am not one to try to mask my Blackness. So I am who I am. I'm going to talk how I talk, y'all. I'm going to say y'all a lot. Fool with the code switching anymore. And that's going to be a whole nother episode in itself. The anti-code switching movement. And I would love to hear y'all's perspectives on that. So that's all I have for the intro. I hope that this is something that you're like, man, I can't wait to hear. Because you know what? I can't wait to start sharing with y'all these interviews from these fantastically magnificent people I've talked to. And I know it sounds exaggerated, but I will hype up all of my guests because we need to. We got to hype each other up, right? You know, we got to, when you hear this podcast and you hear somebody spitting that truth that you need, I want you to hear that Black, hey, I want you to hear that chant. Okay. That's us. Black creatives going pro. That's Blackxecutive. We in this thing. Thanks for listening to another episode of Blackxecutive. If you enjoyed listening in on this convo, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you found us. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Blackxecutive. Have something to add to the conversation? Visit blackxecutive.com to leave feedback, and your thoughts could be featured on a later episode. While you're there, pick up your exclusive Blackxecutive gear and rep the culture. And spread the knowledge. If you know a Black creative trying to go pro, a corporate mogul looking to advance, or a cousin that's always hustling but never gets an idea going, drop them a link to the show. Until next time, keep aspiring to inspire.